All right, well, hi there. Thank you for coming. My name is Ramez Nam. I'm the Director of Program Management for Windows Live Search. It means that I'm a lapsed techie. I once got to do hands-on work, and now I get to manage things. But it's a very, very fun job. It's actually about the coolest job in the tech industry, in my opinion. I'm here to talk about a concept that is super, super simple. It's a feature that we're in the process of shipping now. I'm going to keep this talk short and sweet, and you may even have time to go see part of another talk at the end of it. We'll certainly leave lots and lots of time for discussion at the end. And if you want to go somewhere else during that discussion, feel free to just move on. So let me start with a question. How many of you here search the web? Okay, you're awake. You're not in a food coma. It's a good sign. How many of you here do similar kinds of searches on a regular basis? Maybe you're searching the same sites on the web. You're searching for the same kinds of resources. Okay, that's a lot of what we'll address here today. People today have the ability to use specialty search engines for those abilities, for those sorts of repeated searches, but there's a kind of a missing step that we're going to talk about with this feature. First, just a little bit about Windows Live. Then we'll talk about what is a search macro, what can you do with it, the futures of that, and then really beyond Q&A, I'd like to have discussion. I'd like to hear from you all what you think about this idea, where you'd like to see us take it going forward. So Windows Live Search is an integral part of Live.com. It's powered by the same engine that powers MSN Search. I work on that team. It's all one team at Microsoft, but with a new, more powerful interface, leveraging the kind of AJAX ideas built on the Atlas framework. So I'll give you a little bit of a demo of Windows Live Search and the kinds of things we've added to it. This is my Windows Live homepage. I keep it pretty clean. You've all seen Search many, many times, and you've probably seen some of these features. We've done a couple things to really take the advantage of the power of having a JavaScript client and really moving a little bit towards a client-server model. One is we've changed the scrolling and paging model. Instead of having to go to the bottom of the results and then click next page, you can just keep scrolling infinitely through our result set. We also have given people a little bit more control over the presentation of results. So if you want to have less information about more results, you can do that. If you want to have more information about a smaller number of results, you can do that as well. You'll see us take this concept forward and add more and more ways to customize this UI. There is one kind of neat feature that we have here, which is when the slider is in its far right position, one of the things you can do is search within this site. So the first result for MIX is, of course, MIX06. And let's see if people are talking about IE7 inside MIX06. Oh, look, here are the pages inside the MIX06 site that have text about IE7. We also have news search. We have the ability to search for feeds as well. So if I type in MIX and go on the feed search here, what we're looking at are all the results that are themselves RSS feeds, Atom feeds, or XML feeds. And we have a couple neat features on that. I can go to the Mix blog, I can do a feed preview, and I can actually see what are the posts in the blog right now. If I like this, if this looks like the kind of thing I want to subscribe to, I can just add it to my live.com, and let's not show that again. And you'll see, here it is when I come back to live.com. Henceforth, I'll have the Mix blog in there. We've added a couple other things to the UI. The biggest change really is in the image search area. So if I go and search in images, one of the things that we found is that people use image search very differently than they use web search. For instance, in web search, people about 20% of the time go beyond the first page of results. In image search, that happens about 60% of the time. So that was really the incentive for us to add this model of infinite scrolling. And you see in image search, because it's so easy to visually scan the results, it makes a big impact. We also, again, wanted to give people more control over the results themselves. So if you like larger thumbnails, as you're looking at the images, you can scale them up, get high fidelity pictures of Bill here. But if you'd rather have a lot of images on the page at one time, you can scale the images down and then quickly browse through them. When you see one that looks like it might be the one that you want, you can hover over it, and it'll expand right there for you. Clicking in, you get the same sort of functionality we showed on the main page in the form of an infinite slider, a film strip view, if you will, on the results, so you can keep iterating through results. And then often, when you get an image search result, you don't actually see the picture you are looking for. So you can click this Show Image button, and the picture you want will get overlaid on top of the page. So really, this is just a prelude to the functionality that I'm going to talk about, but it speaks to the same concepts of giving the customer more control over their experience. And the same ideas you see us playing with here, we're going to make available to developers to take advantage of in applications built on top of live search. So with that, I want to get into the heart of the talk here, which is macros. Macros are a super, super simple concept. They're really the ability to define a custom search engine very simply, declaratively, and then install that as a tab in your search UI, or share it with other people who can install it in their search UI. And when we go back to the UI here, you'll see that I actually have some interesting things here added in my search UI. These are macros that I've created or others have created. So if I search for Bill Gates in web search, I get his Microsoft biology, his homepage, and so on. I have this macro called livesearch.health. If I search for Bill Gates in the health macro, I get an article about Bill sharing his fortune. I get an interview where he talks about his desire to give away money for health reasons. I get something from the USDA talking about some of the work that Bill has done in this area. So the idea here is that in general, we can give people the ability to create these custom search verticals and then share them. Today, what we have up on the site is a gallery at microsoftgadgets.com of some predefined macros we've created and the ability for users to install these into their UI. Next week, we're going to release the authoring UI so that absolutely anyone can go and define as many macros as they want and then post those to the gallery and allow others to install them and use them. So let's talk about how a macro works, the anatomy of a macro, if you will. A macro really is composed of just a couple things. The scope, which is what do you want to be searching? Right now, we allow you to search the web index or the news index. And eventually, we'll add other things like the image index and so on. And then the definition, which is really a query augmentation. It's a string that gets added onto the user's query string to modify their query. So a super, super simple example here is a search Microsoft.com macro. So you'd say the scope of this is the web index. The definition of it is site:/Microsoft.com. The operator to restrict a search to just that one site. And the name we've given it is livesearch.microsoft, live search being a namespace. When a user types in a query, like Windows Vista drivers, and then clicks on that macro in the UI, we literally take the definition of the macro, site:/Microsoft.com, expand it out, and add it to the original query. So in concept, it's extremely simple. It's just a way to package up any of the things that you can do in the query language as an easily reusable control or scoping of a query. So what can you do with macros? Basically, you can do anything that our query language can do. Probably the most common and most useful thing for most scenarios will be specifying a list of sites that you want to search. So for instance, I created a Seattle News macro that just specifies the following 4 sites: the Seattle Times, the topics.net page about Seattle, the Seattle Post-Intelligencer, and the Stranger, our free weekly. And those are the vertical bars there are or symbols, and you notice that it's all in parentheses. So I'm just saying when a user types in a query into my Seattle News macro, just limit the result set to anything that is in one of these 4 sites. One thing to bear in mind about macros, really something about our query language is that it's a fully parsed, nestable query language. You can have arbitrary clauses inside of parentheses, and sort of ordinary rules of precedence apply. So you want to be thoughtful about where you put your parentheses, what clauses you bundle together. This is actually something unique about our query language that other search engines don't have. And you'll see in some of the examples later on that you can create pretty interesting macros by combining a number of operators together in interesting ways. So a second thing that you may want to do is just filter the results based on text. So for instance, you can imagine a very, very simple resumes macro that just adds the word resume to every query. It's probably not going to be that useful with this simple definition, but it gives you an idea of the basic things you can do. You can modify that also to say only text in certain parts of the document. So you can say, oh, in this macro, I only want to bring back results that contain the word resume in the title. Or I only want to bring back results that contain resume in the URL, or only if it's in the visible text of the body, or only if it's in the text of links that point to this page. So these are all basic operators, but they're really underused. People don't type in these things. It's a little bit too much of a pain each time. But this way we can package them up and easily reuse them. And of course, since it's a fully nestable query language, you can do arbitrary clauses, like only find me pages that say resume in the title and in the body. So those are a couple of the more basic. We can get into other things that are fun. You can filter on file types. So you could say only PDFs or PostScript files. You can filter on the types of things, types of content that a page links to. So if you want to find pages that have links to MP3 files, you can use the contains operator and say, I only want to find things that are contains MP3, or you can say pages that contain links to either MP3s or WMAs, or you could say only pages that contain links to both MP3s and WMAs, if that's what you wanted. So let's take a look at a few examples that get a little bit more interesting. So this is a slightly more realistic resume search engine. What I've said here is on the top line, if the page is any one of PDF, doc, or PostScript, or it contains a link to a PDF, doc, or PostScript file, and that whole clause, and it contains the word resume somewhere inside of it, then it fits inside of our resume search. And so we can switch over here. I'm going to search on Java. And as you'd expect, I get, actually I'm in the health macro here. On the web, I get the Sun page on Java, I get java.com, and so on. And let's see if I have my, I don't have the macro for resumes installed right now. So I'm actually going to type this syntax, macro mes.resumes. And you'll see that what I get back are senior Java developer, Java leader resume, Paul Hyde, Java expert, etc. So I've just taken some simple rules that I might use on a regular basis, packaged them up, and now I can get back to them. Another fun one. Let's say you wanted to find file shares out there that had links to MP3s or WMAs with no claims about the legality or not legality of any of the content you might find this way. The web is full of interesting stuff. What I'm doing here is I'm saying I want only pages that in the title say index of, because I know that index of is a title that's automatically created by various software that exposes the contents of a directory on the web, that contains links to MP3s or WMAs, and I don't want things that are actual web pages. I can actually do something extremely similar to search for videos if I choose to. And we'll go over here and let's do, we'll search on the space shuttle. See, you get the NASA space shuttle page and so on. If I go to my videos search engine, you see that I get directories that contain links to space shuttle movies and animations. You can always also hover over this macro operator in the UI to find out what the definition of it is. Same thing if I query on Madonna, I'll find her homepage. If I query on the music macro that defined it, I'll find directories that contain links to MP3s and WMAs that mention Madonna. Okay, a couple more advanced things. New operators we've added in some cases that people don't know a whole lot about. We have an operator called feed colon. This restricts the search to only RSS feeds, Atom feeds, or XML feeds. We have another operator called has feed. Does this page have a feed on it? And that restricts the search to only pages that link to RSS, XML, or Atom. Makes it convenient to do a number of things with blogs, for instance. So you can imagine a little podcast search where we've said, I only want pages that have the word podcast somewhere in the title of the URL and that are themselves feeds. And so I'll do a search for DMCA and search podcasts, and you'll see I find a variety. Actually, this is not the podcast search I wanted to use. I'll use this podcast search instead, and you see I get Geek News Central's podcast where they're talking about DMCA issues. I get the Engadget podcast where they're talking about how Engadget got a DMCA letter. So it's easy to modify these things and get some interesting use out of them. Another couple interesting ones are, of course, we have the link operator that allows you to only find pages that link to a specific page. We also have an operator called link domain that allows you to find any page that links to any page on this domain. So what link domain :Microsoft.com will do is return any page that has a link on it to anything on Microsoft.com. So you can use that to build, for instance, a little macro that is what's happening on pages that have links to feeds and that look like they're a blog based on what's in their URL and that have links to Microsoft. So what's the blogosphere saying about Microsoft right now, or perhaps about your company? A couple other operators people don't know about very much. Location, what country is a page hosted in, and language. So you can specify any ISO code as far as what country is this page in, what language is this in, and you can create some interesting things this way. So this is a Middle East search engine. Those locations are Iraq, Egypt, Israel, Iran, Jordan, Kuwait, Libya, a couple places I don't know, Pakistan, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, Syria, and Yemen. And if you want to know what people in those countries are saying about, let's say, George Bush, you can go to the Middle East search engine here, and you see you get hits from Middle East Web, the Daily Star of Libya, Haaretz in Israel, something in Pakistan, etc. And lastly, we have some limited ability to not filter the results, but to control the ranking of the results. So we have an operator called prefer. You can use prefer with anything else in the query language. So you can say prefer : foo, and it will prefer that word, foo, in the content. You can also say something like prefer : site, and then a site that you want to prefer, and it'll boost the ranking of that site. So I'll just do this on the command line for you. I'm going to search for George Bush. You see the results right now are georgebush.com, whitehouse.gov. If I do prefer site : nytimes.com, you see that, we'll search in news here as well. Something's not working for us here today. Let's try cnn.com instead. Well, it wouldn't be a live demo without something going slightly amiss. But this is an operator you can play with yourselves, and you'll see that it normally really does do what I'm describing here. And that's the direction we intend to take this, which is to give more and more control over the ranking of the results as well. So that's really the heart of the feature. As I promised, this is a short, sweet talk about a simple concept. I want to talk a little about future directions and then really get some time for feedback and questions from you. The things that we're thinking about now are, first, shipping the creation experience so that anyone in this room or outside of it can create their own macros and share them. Second, giving you more control. More control over the results themselves, over how to filter them, over how to rank them. More control over the UI to give you ways to control how this is displayed. Giving feedback. What are people doing with my macros? How often has my macro been used? What are they finding? What are the queries that are being done? And then various ways to reuse these results, not just in the UI, but within the search API that we have, to reconsume these results as RSS, and so on. This is the beginning. This is a very simple feature, but one that we intend to improve on month over month based on feedback from the community. And so I'd like to use the rest of this to hear from you, any questions that you have and thoughts that you have about how you'd like to see this go forward. That's it.
My name's, now I got it there.
Now you're on.
Name's Red Shrami. I write a blog called Web 2.0 Central and have a startup called ZigTag. Looks very interesting. So is that accessible via your search APIs, or when is that coming?
So in the search API right now, you can't use it yet, but in the very near future, in the coming weeks, we'll allow you to just type macro : whatever your macro name is, as part of the query in the search API and retrieve those results.
Excellent. Thanks.
Two questions. My name is Bob Rasmussen, first of all. In several of your examples, you used a whole series of ORs, for instance, countries in the Middle East or languages. Do you have some way of aggregating those into a set definition?
So that's a great question. Today we don't. One of the things we've talked about is being able to nest macros in the future. So you could create a macro that is, here is this set of countries, and then reuse that inside another macro, but that's not supported in the version 1.0.
Okay, my second question, and either I missed part of something in the introduction or I'm not in your target audience. I don't understand where this lives. I don't know what live is, and I don't know where a macro definition exists.
Okay, so live.com is our new internet portal. It's a place that's focused on customization, putting the user in control. There's other sessions on live here today. It's a new front end to our existing search engine. And it's the place that we imagine that more savvy users are going to prefer to use versus MSN.com. The macro definition lives on the server in our cloud, and it's something that you can add to your UI, or anyone else can add to their UI inside of live.com, and that's saved as part of your live.com settings.
So just for further clarification, so you guys host the macros on live?
That's
is there
right.
a submission process or an approval process, or anyone can write them, or
anyone?
Are they in a storage space? Maybe, are they tied to my account? Kind of give us a little bit more of the nitty-gritty on that.
Great. You can create a macro. All you need is a live ID or a Microsoft passport, and anyone with that can create as many macros as they want, and then that's stored on our servers on your behalf. Then if you wish to, you can publish those macros to others. And that will, actually one thing I didn't show was the gadgets site. So on the UI today, there's a button here that says Find Macros. If you click on that, you'll be navigated to microsoftgadgets.com that has a gallery of macros that essentially people on the team have made. Next week, you'll be able to go and create your own macros, and if you choose to, publish them to this gallery. We'll have a search interface on this. You see we have ratings and reviews on them, and then you can share those with others. Did that address the question?
You mentioned there's a limit of, or at least I saw, a limit of 10 sites. Is that, explain the logic behind that, and is it 10 sites per parentheses query, or is it 10 sites across everything with links, everything? How does that limitation part work?
So for any individual macro, we can go up to at least several tens of sites, so shy of 100. And if people need more, we'd love to hear about that, because that's something that we can address as well. And that limit is on a per macro basis, not on your account or your whole set of macros. It's really just about performance. Each new term that's added to the query makes the query execution a little bit slower. It's actually not that terrible for us, but at a certain point, if you're adding thousands of sites, it would become fairly bad.
So actually, I had a couple questions. For web publishers, is there any way to kind of package up the web query, the macros you create, and like add it to your own site, or does it automatically go back to live.com?
So I think the scenario you're talking about is where you want to take search results, show them in your UI with the effect of a macro. So with our search API, you can get our search results back and render them on your site for non-commercial use today, or you can sign a deal with us for commercial use of that. And when we integrate the macros with the search API in the next few weeks, you'll be able to do exactly what you described.
Cool. And then the other question is there going to be any way for like sort of manually adding sites and or pages to the particular search you want to do? So let's say I own a site and I add your search to it, and I use a search macro. But what if there's particular content I want to make sure is in it? Is there any way for me to like tag or add particular pages, or sort of like a manual way of adding things to the macro?
So you're saying the scenario is you have a macro that defines a certain set of sites, but you want to...
I want to make sure that certain pages show up, or certain like pages are indexed as part of it.
I see. You want to just get them into our index overall.
Well, and make sure that they show up as part of that macro, yeah.
Yeah, you want to get control over the results of that macro.
Right.
I'd love to talk to you about that in more length. I'd like to understand exactly what the scenario is.
Okay.
Because we definitely want to offer that to people, but we need to understand in a little bit more detail what it is you're trying to do.
Cool.
Cool.
Is there, so it looks like a company like Rollio, which is a little Web 2.0 startup, which had a model, very similar to this, gets to figure out something new, because this looks like it does that and then some, which is good. I always looked at that as a feature, not a company, so that's interesting. Is there a revenue model or potential revenue share if I'm building some fantastic macros that I can then create some popularity for, which is going to drive traffic to live.com, drive ad revenue? Can I share a piece of that?
Would that motivate you to write macros?
Yeah, absolutely.
Then we'll work on it.
Excellent.
Okay, well, thank you very much. I hope you're all recovering from lunch, and enjoy the rest of your day.